What's up, everyone? Welcome to another Beyond the Pit, where there's Star Wars and there's everything else, and this is the Everything Else series. Today, I've got Scott Solo here with me because we're going to be talking about Indiana Jones.
Oh, my other favorite subject. What's up, nerds?
Yes, welcome. This Indiana Jones, next to Star Wars, is probably my second favorite IP, and then it goes Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings. Those are my three top favorite IPs, and I have many more. But Indiana Jones is one that hits me just like Star Wars does from childhood, from seeing the movies, or actually saw Temple of Doom in the theater, of course, Last Crusade. When I moved up to Victorville, it started, I think it was like 1990, 91, something like that, when Last Crusade came out. So that's when I moved up to
1989.
I think it was playing then when I moved up here, like Christmas time or whatever. Yeah. Again, second to Star Wars, probably the most quotable. Probably the most recognizable. You're wearing the fedora. Yep. We've got the map in the background. But I always refer to the first three films as the holy trinity of Indiana Jones. I can give or take Crystal Skull because
we can get into that.
I'm going to get into it, and there's a reason why I think it's not as accepted as the other three. But do you have a favorite quote from Indiana Jones?
Favorite quote from Indiana.
I have mine. I'm ready to roll.
Do you really? My favorite. I actually have a quote from each of the movies.
Okay.
That really works for me. For Raiders of the Lost Ark, who whenever it first came out, the opening weekend, we saw it at George Air Force Base in Victorville.
Wow. Okay.
There was a movie theater there, and it scared the hell out of me because
the melting faces, the ghosts, snakes, and
scared the hell out of me. But it's not the years, honey; it's the mileage.
I love it. I love it.
Pretty much sums up my life.
Yeah, it's such a great Raiders is, of course, it's set in the 1940s or 1930s, like right before 1936, correct, before World War II and all that stuff, and looking, because we've talked about this. We're history buffs, and Hitler in real life was obsessed with the occult and religious artifacts and war power and all that stuff, and it was a great foresight to have this kind of movie of a professor turned archaeologist, and then basically going into the lion's den and hunting, artifacts with the Nazis. It's such a great concept because I think the time period of the 1930s and 40s is so dangerous. It's such a dangerous world, of course, in Europe, right? But as a kid, it's so funny. I was afraid, like growing up in the 80s, as I read about the Holocaust and stuff in elementary school, like everything, and it scared the hell out of me. It scared the hell out of me because I thought it was happening now. Like as a kid, I thought the Germans were still doing these things. I thought that Hitler was still alive. I didn't know that was like 40 years ago or 30, whatever it was at that time. I'm like, I was so relieved. Yeah. But then so when I watch Indiana Jones and those kind of movies, really, really put that fear into me. So I really appreciate the time frame of the Last Crusade and Raiders. But my favorite Indiana Jones film is Temple of Doom. Out of the four, my favorite is Temple of Doom.
It amazes me the amount of hate that movie gets.
I don't know why.
I don't get it.
So.
Yeah. My favorite quote from that one is actually from
it's all from Short Round. Short Round has the best lines in the whole franchise.
I use it all the time. I mean, all the time. And it's no time for love, Dr. Jones.
That's right. Mine is always like, hang on, lady, we're going for a ride. I always use that every time someone gets in the car with me and everything.
He's not nuts. He's crazy.
He's crazy. Look at the homage that he even paid tribute to Star Wars, right? Club Obi-Wan, right? And even in the first one, the hieroglyphics, right? It was at Last Crusade.
No, it was in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah, it was C-3PO and R2-D2.
Yeah, so of course, George Lucas and Spielberg, right? So, man, like I remember seeing Temple of Doom as a kid, and you know me. And people that know me, I'm a huge horror fan, huge horror buff, right? I love horror movies, and probably why Temple of Doom was is probably one of my favorite of the three because it is a comic book, it is a horror movie, it is all those things. I have a confession to make. As a kid in the movie theater, I closed my eyes at the heart scene. I'm ashamed of myself. I'm ashamed of myself. I didn't close my eyes at the eels or the monkey brains or the eyeball soup, which were it was a fantastic scene. But today I look at it, I go, man, why did I do that? I'm such a horror fan. But it just and somebody told me it in school, was like, there's a scene where he rips the guy's heart out, and I was like anticipating it too much. I was like, yeah.
I actually had you remember the old books or not books on tape, but the storybook that would come with the cassette tape.
Absolutely.
I had Return of the Jedi and Empire and A New Hope back whenever it was just Star Wars on record, but I had the cassette tape of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom with the music and the short rounds lines and man, I think I wore that out.
Yeah.
I had the storybook. I loved it. I don't know what it is because it was scary too. You had a heart being ripped out. It's still beating and it catches on fire.
Love it.
You've got all the brains and eels and eyeballs and all that stuff and all the bugs everywhere. But for some reason, it did not scare me as much. Maybe I was already desensitized by Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Sure. So, yeah.
I was also considerably older, so it didn't quite scare me as much.
You're only 2 years older than me. But I have a fear of, I have arachnophobia anyway, so I don't like spiders and stuff. So that scene when they're in the corridor, that don't like it still to this day. But
we are going to die.
I actually had the making of book. I had a book. Nice. It was a souvenir book. I don't know where I got it, but it was a magazine. Back in the 80s, and it had the making of everything. It even had the miniatures. I saw, the guys were towering over the mine car thing, and they were building it. It was a whole flip book that I had. It was like, I'm
pretty sure I have it right over here on my bookshelf.
Amazing. That's probably mine. You probably bought it. My parents threw it away, so you probably, no, I'm kidding. But I remember having that, and after the movie, I got it, and I'm just sitting in the restaurants and everything, and just mesmerized about
poring over it.
Yeah, just the making of the film. And that's why I love behind the scenes stuff. Yeah. Because a little bit of the magic is spoiled, but you're like, it's still magical because like, how did they do that? It was so like the mine car ride. It was such a great thing that Disneyland, hey, Disney, that's, you guys should make that ride. Right. But their ride at Disneyland is amazing, by the way. But it's getting a little rickety, though. I will tell you that because I hurt my back a lot, or I'm getting rickety. Let's just put it that way.
I think that's the real truth, right?
Yeah, they're like, no, it's smooth, dude. It's just you that you can't. But no, it's cool, man. And
between that, Return of the Jedi, those were the two movies that really inspired my interest to know how they did it. Yeah. And I specifically remember because I got that same souvenir. I got the Return of the Jedi souvenir book on opening day of Return of the Jedi. Yeah. And reading and seeing the speeder bike and how they did it. And right there with you, man, between that and the mine cars and everything. Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, I used to go to the movie theater, and this is how I spent my summers. My dad would drive me and a friend to the movie theater right when we lived in Orange County in California here, about 10 o'clock in the morning, and we would go up to the box office, and we would map out our day. Nice. We're going to go see Rocky IV here, then we're going to go to see Ghostbusters, and we're going to go see Batman or whatever was playing, and we would map out our whole day. So I would tell my dad, yeah, I'll call you about 9 o'clock tonight. But next door was a little Mexican restaurant, or like a takeout, and they had the Indiana Jones arcade. And I would pump so many quarters in there because I could not pass the mine card thing. It was that 5 seconds into it, you crash. 5 seconds in, you crash.
Yeah, and I remember that.
Yeah, and Molaram is just taunting you the whole time. And I just, again, Indiana Jones has such a affinity in my childhood. It makes up me as a person. It really does. The sense of adventure, the just want to be him.
And you said it right there too. You said Molaram, the villains in Indiana Jones too. I mean, you didn't have the continuing villain like you had in Star Wars. You had the villain, the episodic villain of the week.
Correct.
Thing.
Yeah,
you had
a real serial. Yeah.
You had Belloc and the evil Nazis and Tot in the first one.
Yes, Tot. I love Tot.
Yeah. And then you had Molaram, who is terrifying. And
with a thuggy cult, and then we go back. But we go back to the Nazis in Last Crusade, but it's a new generation thing. And again, it's the again going back. A lot of people think, have Last Crusade as their favorite, and I agree. I again, I have a definitive love for all three films.
Yeah.
But going back to that era and the occult, and it shows the real history. See, think about Indiana Jones, and except for Temple of Doom, and for the most part Raiders, but Last Crusade had some real historical events taking place. You do have that group that's to protect the Crusaders. What do they call it? I forgot what they called
me too.
Mahajadeen or something.
With the tattoos that.
They have those are real life. That's a real life thing. And also the burning of the books.
Yes.
They're going into where, that was the great, Admiral Oswald.
I know.
Played Hitler in Crusade. You see, again, the whole thing. But I love how that he bumps in and he gets this, the
autograph in the Grail book.
Diary.
Oh my
it's so
God.
great. But again, you had real historical things, and we were talking about, the Indiana Jones Chronicles, right? The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. And I was so mesmerized about that series because it really put real history.
I learned more about world history watching the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles than I ever did in school. I mean, because in 100%. School, in high school and college, you learn American history and you learn some kind of abridged version of, they always say history is written by the victor. Right. And the history that you learn in the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles is the unfiltered version of history.
Correct.
Where it's not always, sunshine and roses and puppy dogs and rainbows,
Right.
It was down and dirty. It was, it started off really lighthearted, but got very dark during the World War I. I mean, he spent like a season and a half in World War I fighting and killing. It was dark.
Yeah. And they're hour and a half, hour long episodes. I mean, they're long episodes, and I really appreciated all those, and like I said, I really got into that. And that took us from when was Raiders when it came out? Was it
Raiders was 81, I believe.
Okay, so between 81 and 89, you had 3 films.
Yeah,
and we always again, I think George Lucas's plan was to have Indiana Jones almost like a 007, where anybody could take up the mantle of Indiana Jones and have this continuation of a real serial series and stuff, But what the movies got us was a family thing because it brought in, Senior, Sean Connery, all stuff, and was fantastic. And this is where my love kind of it doesn't stop. I won't say this, but trying to choose my words correctly here because I can never say anything bad about Indiana Jones just because of nostalgia. But my mind and my heart was set to end when they rode off into the sunset. You had Marcus, Henry Jones Sr. and Indiana Jones. You had them ride off to the sunset. It was a perfect poetic ending to a great series of films that you could put on a shelf and just go to it periodically. It didn't need remade. It didn't need so when Crystal Skull was announced, I was excited, just like any fanboy would really be. I think everybody was excited. I'm sure you were too.
I was there on opening day.
Yeah, and I watched it. I was entertained with it. I've watched it more now. Like I watched it twice in the movie theater. Chris was with me. We did want to say, I don't know if it was a midnight show, but we stood in line for that, and we saw it twice, and there was something I just couldn't grasp. I was like, I just don't get that feeling of Indiana Jones. I don't know if I needed this story. My theory is they waited way too long to do it.
I want to say I agree with you there. I agree that they waited too long. I have this argument with, because I went and saw it. I saw it 2 or 3 times in the theater as well, hoping that every time I saw it, I would like it a little bit more. And
I really tried. Like, you really want to try,
I did too. And my cat is currently going after something, and I don't know what it is.
That's could be dangerous too. Talking about bugs.
Yeah, and lizards. We have a lot of lizards around town, and both of them right now are after. I'm sorry, I digress. So, I'm watching Indiana. Yeah, it's a lizard. Thanks, Rusty. So the Young Indiana. I'm sorry, not the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I have this argument that there is, after watching it several times, that there is nothing in it that is any more ridiculous than what you've seen in Raiders of the Lost Ark,
right?
The Temple of Doom, and The Last Crusade. I think it is too polished. I think it is. I mean, I know what they were going for. They were going for a B movie flavor, a 50s B movie with the aliens and everything. But I think it was too polished. They waited too long to do it. The CG, you could tell that it was filmed in front of green screens where the originals weren't.
Right.
Except, of course, for the mine car scene. Of course, those were miniatures and filmed in the green screen.
And,
But it was just too heavily reliant on the computer graphics and on CG, and it took the reality away from it.
As most movies in that time was.
Exactly.
And around that time.
Yeah, 2008, I think it was.
Yeah, and a lot of movies were
way too heavy on it.
Yeah. And of course, I think that's George Lucas's thing too. At the time, he was trying to really change cinema yet again, and going into such a digital realm that sometimes analog and tape and film has a better effect than digital. Has changed today, though. It has changed yet again, because the Mandalorian is shown that you can go back to digital, and it's just amazing. But I think the Mandalorian does it right, though, where you are acting in front of a set. It might be digitally created, but you are letting the actors act in front of a set and two people, not. And they're going back to practical. They're going back to practical, and and to me, sometimes like using Indiana Jones franchise as a test film, which basically as far as cinematic, technology, it was like, no, man, you can't. You shouldn't have done. Now, I understand that Indiana Jones had a bunch of novels, and they all had these kind of serial things. Like he would go after, flying saucers and all that stuff. And his novels are all over the place, different things. And again, Crystal Skull was a perfect adaptation of one of these, like a brand new, brought to life novel. Just another adventure. He has many adventures, but I think I'm still stuck on, like I said, the Holy Trinity or trilogy,
right?
Of Indiana Jones, having those perfect 3 films. Now, even though Temple of Doom is a sequel or a prequel, a lot of people don't know that either. It came before, it was filmed differently, but it was a prequel.
Yeah, set in 1935.
Correct.
1 year before Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right, which is great. Again, I think it suffers. The Crystal Skull suffers from too long. Now they're making Indiana Jones 5, and I'm having the same kind of reaction now. And Spielberg's not involved.
But James Mangold is. And James Mangold, isn't he the director from Logan? I should have looked that up. I'll look that up really quick.
Yeah, and also not Lawrence Kasdan, but his son.
Right. And Lawrence Kasdan wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark. And did he write all 3 of them?
He did the screenplay, because Lucas wrote all of them.
Right. Well, story by. Okay, so James Mangold, he's currently in production of the 5th Indiana Jones. He did Ford versus Ferrari, Walk the Line, and Logan.
Yeah, and I think we're in good hands when it comes to this creative team. Again, I look at it too. Also, like, are we a little too late in the game here again?
Oh, way too late.
Okay. Because we just saw a report that Harrison Ford got injured doing a stunt, right?
Yeah.
And whatever. It didn't stop production, but it stopped his role in it for a few days or a week or whatever. And here's the thing: I'm like, this is where I wish, like I said, Harrison Ford agreed to do this, so that I put my faith in it. It must be good, right? I don't know if I'm naive on that aspect or what.
Homeboy had the final say on whether or not he would do Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I mean that was Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. You get rid of the actual live, full-bodied alien at the end of it, and you get rid of the monkey flying through, swinging through vines scene, and that makes it a good movie to me. Yeah, and I know you have a problem with the ants, right?
Because I do.
The ants,
I just think it's a little ridiculous on that whole jungle Amazon thing. That it just wasn't executed
It was too polished. It was too.
Yeah. And I guess
it just didn't work.
I get the campiness of it. I get the over exaggeration of it. I get that. I'm not mad at that, you know, but it just was weird. It just was weird. But again, if it's a good story, you can get over that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The story was decent. Again, it reminded me of the novels. It reminded me of a one-off comic series that brought to whatever.
Right.
But, you know, the first three films referenced a lot of the backstories, you know, of especially when we're talking about the Ark and stuff.
Dude, one of my favorite things. Okay.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things. Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom. At the beginning, when he's going for the diamond with Lao She.
Yeah.
And he's got that diamond in his hand. That diamond in the Young Indiana Jones Chronicle, he and his best friend Remy spend like months, almost 2 years searching for that diamond and out there. And it's, I forget what it's called. But yeah, that's the diamond. And in the book adaptation of Indiana Jones, he writes Remy a letter saying, "I had it in my hand."
Awesome.
And I'm just like, oh, come on now, man.
Awesome. That connection is so fantastic.
I love it.
And that's what makes Indiana Jones so great. And I'm hoping that this Indiana Jones 5 is probably going to be the last one with Harrison Ford.
I think they did say it is the last Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to put this on record because I've goofed around this, you know, but I think it would be awesome. And maybe if you're listening to this, you put your comments in the comment section, because I want to hear your thoughts on this. Like, I always bring up Tom Selleck when I talk to the guys about Indiana Jones, because he was slated to, or he was auditioned. He auditioned to play Indiana Jones back in the 1980s. Would it be cool to have, you know, again, Senior's dead and moving forward, wouldn't it be cool for Tom Selleck to show up as a rival to Indiana Jones through this whole movie, the Indiana Jones 5, but to come find out that they were long lost brothers, that, you know, because they were both promiscuous, the Senior and, you know, Indiana, they were promiscuous, and Indiana Jones, Henry Jr. didn't even know Mutt was his son.
Was his son. So what about Tom Selleck coming in, because I think he would be a great actor in this series. And then having a long lost brother, and then they can have this rift between each other, and they can, like, comic, work off each other, but actually work with each other too. It'd be interesting.
I don't know, man. I just kind of like think that's a cool throwback to, like, that Tom Selleck hasn't been doing much, I don't think so.
He's got a TV show.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah,
I haven't caught up on the mustache
TV show.
So, yeah.
You know, if they keep the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles as canon, then it would have to be his younger brother by at least 10 or 11 years, because Indy's mom died when he was 10. Right. So, or 15 or something like that.
Well, it wouldn't be like a half brother. It wouldn't be like a full brother with Henry.
Okay, so you mean
Senior had is promiscuous, man. They're out there adventuring. He's young. It can happen.
Not when his wife was with him, though, because he took his wife on his adventures with him.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, it would have to be after she died.
Yeah, I was just thinking about
it would put Senior in a really negative light in my eyes.
I mean, it puts him as a flawed person.
That's true. Yeah.
But also I also envision it as a half brother. I wouldn't be a full brother. Like, it would be. Yeah. So, you're right though. There is some issues there.
Yeah.
It could be the time where they separated for a weekend. I don't know. He was off an adventure. Indiana Jones had sex with so many women because he got through a lot of Marians. It's like to even double up on names. I mean, in a crystal skull. So I wouldn't put it past like father, like son, and long lost brother. Or we also talked about too, Indiana Jones, like, is Mutt going to be in this one? Because I thought they was passing the mantle on this, or did Mutt and Marion go off there after Crystal Skull? It just didn't work out, and they just went off the venture.
I want Marion in it. I loved Marion Ravenwood. Great name, great character.
Awesome name.
Mutt. Yeah. You know what? Other than those scenes I'd mentioned, Mutt was not terrible. I mean, he was not a terrible character.
I think people were against Shia LaBeouf. But after, because he went nuts, or he did his thing. I think that was where it killed his own career. It killed the visions of him. But he was great in every movie he was. Well, okay, he was great in the movies I've seen him in. I know there are some independent movies that people go like, "Whoa, he's losing his mind at this point." But you know, the kid is good. The guy, he was good in that. He was good then.
Yeah,
I bought into the fact that the hat was going to be passed to him. Like, okay, this is where we're going. Shia LaBeouf is a Spielberg a go-to at that moment.
Yep.
He was at the top of the world at that time frame, or leading up to it. It made sense moving forward, but I don't think they're going to capitalize on it. And you mentioned maybe he'll bring in a daughter.
Yeah. I mean,
because we are in our times, right? I mean, this is the thing. It's and this is where you do it.
Yeah,
you don't change Indiana Jones to a female. You just have a daughter take up the mantle and go 3 more films with that. I would be amazed with that. I mean,
I'd be okay with it.
And but that's how you do it.
The crazy thing is, though, since we're continuing on the time and time passes in real time in Indiana Jones's world. Okay, so if that means
he's 80 years old in this film,
this film is going to take place in 1977,
right?
Which, get your mind around the fact
so he's going to go to Star Wars the premiere.
Yeah, Indiana Jones exists in a time of Star Wars, in a time when we're alive.
Yeah,
and that trips me out, man, because you think of Indiana Jones being in the 30s and all that, and you just that blows me away.
If it's 1970s, okay, we'll speculate a little bit about the new film. We don't know what it's called. We just know it's being filmed.
Yeah, and we've seen some behind the scenes with Nazis in 1930s cars, so we know there's going to be some kind of a flashback.
Exactly, because I go okay, Indiana Jones is always set in some sort of conflict, even in the Chronicles, whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, we just got out of in the 1977, we just got out of the Vietnam War a couple years before that, but maybe we're going somewhere in almost like the beginning of Raiders, the Idol of Fertility.
I have a theory.
Go ahead. Yes.
I have a theory.
There's poison darts and traps. That's what I'm saying. Booby trap. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
It is widely speculated that Hitler did not die in Germany.
Right.
That Hitler actually, and a lot of Nazis did escape to South America.
Correct. Argentina,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I was going to say Peru, but you're right. It's Argentina.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm thinking this is going. We are seeing Nazis, and we're seeing Nazi vehicles and all that in 1930 something. I think they're escaping, going to Argentina. Maybe they've got some of those artifacts.
Yeah.
That Hitler had, and now he's being tasked with tracking down these in Argentina somewhere,
or getting to an artifact before they get to use it, or just like the Grail and just like the Ark of the Covenant.
Somebody's after one of those old things. It's in Argentina. That's where he's going. Guaranteed, confirmed.
Yeah. In the Crystal Skull, they go to the warehouse of all the artifacts are.
Yeah.
It's destroyed, right?
Ooh, I don't know if it's outright destroyed, but it is.
But it was messed up, right? So all those artifacts were free to the grabbing. If anybody could go grab it. So maybe in the beginning of this film, we go to that destruction site where everything was, and they either take the Ark, or they take somebody's gathered up all the artifacts, and now they have, and everything's gone now. So all the top secret stuff is gone.
Name of the movie is Indiana Jones and All His Lost Crap.
The Lost Collection.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
That's
cool. So we both have theories. I love it.
Yeah. So if they use the Ark again,
yeah, I honestly don't think they will, but you're right though. I forgot about that.
Yeah, the warehouse was it was
messed up.
It was no longer secure, and all the artifacts are free for the taking.
Yeah,
so yeah, man, I'm excited. Of course, I'm in. I say, like I said at the beginning of this, I see the Indiana Jones trilogy. I see it as a perfect trilogy. I really, really do. I mean, next to Star Wars, next to the original trilogy of Star Wars, because of how it began, the whole history that we got to it, the whole world building that Indiana Jones gave us, and the riding off to the sunset. I think that is so poetic and so beautiful as a film, as three films. It's great. Crystal Skull is a redheaded stepchild. Pardon all the redheaded people out there, but it just is, because again, too long, I think, and maybe it's just too campy. It just doesn't fit within the rest of the realm of it. I'm hoping that this next Indiana 5 is not cringy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I trust. Well, I have no choice but to trust the creative minds behind it. So,
I think being out of the hands that it was in, no offense, to the idea man that is George Lucas, but I think being out of his hands and because even Steven Spielberg, to a point, he's getting into his movies are being a little overly polished.
Yeah.
You look at Ready Player One, which is a great book, but the movie is not great at all. Yeah. It's overproduced. It's he either does these really groundbreaking, like low budget films that are incredible, like Schindler's List or something, which is an incredible movie.
Right.
Or he does, and also there's a 20-year gap here. Ready Player One, which is just like, oh God, turn it off. There's too much stuff coming at me all at once.
Yeah.
And Crystal Skull is like that. Crystal Skull is like, there's a lot of stuff coming at me all at once. It's way too polished. Yeah. I think being out of their hands and passed on, the hat being passed on to a new generation there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree a lot on that. And I'm anticipating what we're gonna see. And
me too.
Yeah, man. Again, and I just kind of remind me, I'm gonna put Spielberg into our wheel as a subject. Spielberg and his whole collectiveness, from E.T. to Ready Player One, from Jaws to Duel. Duel, his first film.
I've never seen it.
I'm sorry, it's not his first film.
Okay.
Duel is, don't quote me on it, but I think it was. I don't know. Maybe it was first film. I think it was.
Okay.
I'm not cutting this out either. Flaw. All right. But yeah, Spielberg would be a great subject for another Beyond the Pit, right?
Yeah.
So with that, I think we're good. I love talking Indiana Jones. This is what we do when we're standing in line waiting for a Star Wars movie or maybe a superhero movie or stuff. We run the gambit. Our whole crew runs the gambit of pop culture, anything that's not grounded in earth, because that's not why we go to the movies. It's not why we read our comics. It's not why we collect the toys. It's to really go away from culture in general, just for a little bit, because we all still have to live in it. But Indiana Jones, again, second to none, or second to Star Wars. Let's put that way.
Second to one.
Second to one.
There we go.
And that's why we say this is the Beyond the Pit. There's Star Wars. There's everything else, and this is the Everything Else series. So with that,
keep it nerdy.